Welcome to another edition of Deep Look as we welcome you inside our live show now on YouTube every Tuesday at noon. I am Charlie Eisenhood, back again alongside Keith Rayner. And sorry I missed you last week, Keith, but excited for a mega show as we get to break down a ton of exciting college ultimate as we get to the mid-majors in the season.
Yeah, we're kind of like smack dab in the middle. It's like we've seen pretty much every team. We've gotten a couple looks at most of the top teams, and we're coming off a weekend where we really had some of that cross-coast connectivity. We really started to see the separate bubbles of the East and West come together at some major events, and it's starting to feel like we're getting a sense of who is really in the mix to win a national title and who's going to be fighting for bids at the margins.
Well, we got a lot to get to. Stanford invite, Smoky Mountain invite, D3 tune-up. So much to discuss. But first, we have our trivia question of the week. Keith, what do you got for me?
All right. So, with it being both a time where we're looking at the season as it has gone so far and also looking towards what this will imply for the end of the year, thought we'd talk about how the number one team in the power rankings at the end of the regular season has done down the line at nationals. So I took basically the years that we've been doing power rankings, which is since 2014. I removed the 2021 and 2020 seasons because of COVID. So with that information, how many times has the number one team in the power rankings at the end of the regular season gone on to win the D1 national championships in both divisions? So you have, I believe that's 12 different years to pick from across the both divisions. No, 16. So you got 16 total opportunities for the number one team
8
to
years,
win the national championship.
2 divisions.
How many did they?
How many times did the top ranked team at the end of the season win? I think it's going to be less than you think. But lately, UNC has been number one. And they have obviously gone on to win. So I'm definitely thinking it's at least half. I can remember, we were actually talking about this the other day in Discord, Keith. Minnesota men were number one back in 2014, I want to say, after they won Easterns. And then they failed to even make it to the game to go at North Central Regionals. They got knocked out by Iowa. So my guess is going to be 11 out of 16 times. That's going to be my guess. So
all right,
before
good guess.
Before we get the answer, really quick, I want to let you know that Deep Look is sponsored by Sunset Lake CBD. So if you are in the market for a little CBD products, check it out. Sunset Lake CBD is a majority employee-owned hemp farm located right outside of Burlington, Vermont. Before they started growing hemp, they produced cream for Ben & Jerry's ice cream. As farmers, they believe in providing only top-shelf CBD and hemp products at fair prices. They cut out the middleman and ship their CBD straight from their farm to your door. And listen, they gave us a box of items as a part of the sponsorship here, just as kind of a trial product so we could talk about it on the air. And they had sleep gummies in there that have like CBD and melatonin in them. They also have non-melatonin versions for those who don't want to take melatonin. So I took one of those. It had been a couple of nights of bad sleep with the baby here. And like it said, take it about an hour before you're ready to go to bed. So I took one. 45 minutes later, I'm like falling asleep on the couch. I go to bed. I sleep amazing. I feel great the next day. Impressed. Very impressed. So check them out today at sunsetlakecbd.com. Use coupon code DEEPLOOK for 20% off your order. Farmer-owned, Vermont-grown, Sunset Lake CBD. All right, Keith, trivia answer. Give it to me. I said 11 out of 16.
I took a couple of those CBD gummies with me on a flight to Phoenix, so I love no grogginess coming out of it. I appreciate that you're not groggy when you wake up. So your answer for the number of number one teams at the end of the regular season that have gone on to win the national title across D1 men's and women's, since 2014. There have been 7 teams that have done that. I'll give you the rundown. Last year, obviously both divisions. UNC the favorite in both divisions. They go on to win. 2 years ago, that was true in the women's division again, UNC. Men's division, Brown was the number 1 team coming out of the regular season. Don't forget, they were the top team. They were also the top team in 2019. They went on to win that year. In the women's division, Ohio State was the number 1 team at the end of the regular season. UCSD goes on to win in that incredible game against Dartmouth. Speaking of Dartmouth, 2018, Dartmouth in the women's division, both number 1 and the winner. Carleton, the number 1 in the men's division. UNC goes on to get the win. That's 2018. Remember, we're skipping 2021 and 2020. Then you go back, 2017, UMass in men's, Carleton gets the win. Texas in women's, Dartmouth gets the win. That was a wild year. In women's in 2016, Oregon number 1, Stanford gets the win, another classic. And in men's, UMass was number 1. Remember, this is the big UMass
that goes to that year.
They were all hype.
Oh yeah.
Well, so 2015 was the year that they were really. 2016 was the year they were really good, and then they were the number 1 seed, I think, and then they got bounced.
They lost in pre-quarters,
something like that.
Lost in pre-quarters,
and Minnesota went on to win that year.
Yes.
2015, Pittsburgh, year number 1. North Carolina gets the win that year in men's. UBC, number 1 in women's. Oregon gets the win that year. And in 2014, sweeps across the board, Colorado in men's and Ohio State in the women's division. So it's 7 total teams finish number 1 in the regular season and go on to win. So that's not really the best hit rate, to be honest.
I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to predict that neither number 1 team at the end of this season goes on to win. That's my prediction.
Spicy. I like that.
Yeah.
And you know what? That portends a great nationals to me. I mean, that means some real hype when we get down to brass tacks at nationals.
The year UMass was number 1 and they lost in pre-quarters was probably the best college nationals of all time. I know I haven't seen them all, but I think that was probably the best of all time. The Harvard run, the Minnesota, they lose Osgar, it doesn't matter. That was crazy. What a crazy year. All right, let's get into this.
Definitely the years where it's different is the best ones.
Yes, for sure. We're going to do something fun today. We're going to do a little buy, sell, hold on various topics. But really quick, just want to go over the stories from the weekend. First and foremost, Vermont comes back from down 3 to win on Universe over UBC. To win the Stanford Invite in the women's division. Oregon men take down a pretty light schedule at the Stanford Invite men's division. And then over at Smoky Mountain Invite, UMass takes down Georgia to win the thing after they beat UNC in semifinals. That's the second year in a row that they've beaten UNC at Smoky Mountain. Last year was in the final. This year they did in semis. And then that was just men's division at that tournament. So let's start there, Keith. Just quick thoughts, perhaps, on what? Let's just save it for buy, sell, hold. Right off the top, I want to ask you, UNC men, where are you right now with them? They lose to UMass in semis. Are you buy, sell, or hold on this team? Of course, number 1 coming into the weekend.
I am selling on UNC.
Wow.
This is why. If you had come into this year thinking that they were like the measuring, the only way that you were going to win a title is through UNC, if you can really defend that position at this point. You can imagine a world in which they are not in the final. Now, I still believe them to be the favorite. I think they have the best odds of winning a title. I think they have the best odds of being in the final, of course. I think they are the favorite in the division. But the gap is narrowed. So in some ways, you could probably call that a hold. But if you're giving up points, if you're giving up the opportunity to be a favorite by an even larger margin, that's a backslide. So ultimately I have to sell, even though I still believe in them as the favorite in the men's division.
Really quickly, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the D3 tune-up. There was not a traditional tournament format, but two teams went undefeated, Whitman and Franciscan. Back to UNC. For me, it's a hold. Okay. Look, they lost here last year. They explicitly planned their season around developing their team and their younger players throughout the course of the regular season before getting ready for nationals. Now, I watched that whole UMass UNC game. I will be the first to admit that they didn't look great in that game. They missed on a lot of away shots. Their defense got picked on the break side with a lot of hammers. They were just a little bit inconsistent in a way that you don't typically see from them. On the other hand, it was kind of like the perfect storm for UMass. There wasn't any wind. They were hitting on their shots. Now they're a great team. Like, we know that. We knew that last year. And if anything, I feel like their D-line has a little bit less offensive punch than it did a year ago because Jonas Dang Osborne isn't out there to stretch the field. So I think UMass is very good, but I'm not going to sell my UNC stock here. As high priced as it is, I still think you got to accept the fact that the price has gone down because of this loss, and you just want to stay the course because at the end of the day, Keith, this is still the favorite to win the national championship. I mean, they throttled UMass at nationals.
All fair. I just think that we have seen UMass and Slow look a lot closer to UNC than we might have expected coming into the year. And there's obviously a really strong cast of challengers behind those teams that I think are probably good enough to, if they catch UNC playing like this, beat them at nationals. So to me, they're in a worse position than they were when we started the year, if from my estimation. And that is accounting for the fact that we thought that there were some good teams to test them. But they don't look where I want them to be at this point in the year.
I can understand that. But, when I see like Ben Dameron throwing turnovers, I'm like not worried about that happening at nationals, to be honest with you. Who's next in buy, sell, hold?
I'm a little concerned about the way their offense was performing against UMass's defense. But next up in so hold, well, if we're going to talk about one team that got upset, we got to go to the other team that got upset. UBC in the women's division. Are you buying, selling, or holding?
Oh, honestly, I might be buying. Like after this weekend, I think it's a chance to accumulate. Look, they were 3 points better than this UVM team. They had the disc on the goal line multiple times to win the game. They literally caught the disc in the end zone on a contested up-down call on like a toe-the-line clap catch where like from the camera angle, you couldn't really tell if the disc was bobbled or not, but it got sent back as a contest by the observer, and then they turned it over. And those very poor late-game turnovers were not good. You don't want to blow a 3-goal lead at game point. It happened, but I thought that they looked like the superior team throughout the game. And so far, they, to me, passed the eye test as the best team in the country right now. So I'm going to buy more UBC stock. And I already held a lot of it, Keith.
I'm not far. I think we're not far apart on this. I'm probably holding. I think that it does concern me to see them go down in a ball of flames behind just execution errors. This is something that I feel like has plagued UBC teams throughout the years. Even their best teams just have this inexplicable ability to have even their most skilled players just miss a bunch of times in a row. And this group is a little, I think, that we've seen from UBC teams past, and they still could get bully balled a little bit by Vermont. I kind of feel like Vermont could bully ball almost anybody. So take that for what it is. But I think UNC also had in their game, so a little worried about UBC as they stack up against the truly elite teams in the division. But ultimately, you're right. They outplayed Vermont for the large portion of that game, and I think that they are still perhaps the number one team in the women's division as far as like title contenders right now. So I'm going to hold with all that information sat in front of us. Where do you want to go next?
I must admit, as a final thought here, UBC having kind of like mental meltdowns here, and then last year in semis when they were like not even competitive with Colorado, a team that maybe was better than them but not that much better than them, is concerning, right? Like I do think that addressing the like mental performance side of the game is going to be an important thing for them to focus on over the next couple of months if they really want to reach their ceiling and potentially win a championship. But I love the talent, love the way that they played most of that game. They're aggressive. They have great defense. Yeah. But I'll flip the coin here and say, how about Vermont? Buy, sell, or hold?
I'm buying on Vermont. I think that this is a great sign for them long term. The fact that they were able to dig themselves out of a hole with a bunch of real playmaking and willpower and grit, like I think that's a great sign for a team that has had trouble with that in years past. I think Kennedy McCarthy, despite the jump ball game winner, two really on the game winning possession, looks like a much more mature offensive player. I think Caroline Stone is putting together an All-American quality campaign, and I think they look deep. I mean, they have a bunch of athletes. They're certainly in contention. I'm buying even on what was an expensive blue chip stock coming into this weekend.
Do I want to buy more here on Vermont? I think I'm a hold. I think this is approximately what I expected. For them to win the tournament is definitely above my expectations. But like I said, I think to me, I watched the UBC team kind of give away a game that they should have won, more so than Vermont like taking it from them. Now, credit to Vermont. They're a great team. They're willing to shoot it. They have huge playmakers. I think that they're a semis team basically lock at nationals. And to get a win like this can help generate belief that you can do it. And when you're down in a game at nationals, you can draw on the well that is that Stanford final. And I think that's really important. But I'm not sure I quite want to push more chips in. I'm already pretty high on this team.
Charlie, we got a number of calls for us to buy, sell, hold, various questions about the bids. So make sure you and if you're following along at home, that you pull up your frisbeerankings.com. We don't have the first USA Ultimate bids out, although this week. Is this week the week to expect it?
I believe this is the week. I believe this is the week.
So we may actually get our first official picture, although, we all know that at the end of the season, a bunch of weird stuff happens. And so you can't quite settle in, but we got a bunch of questions about bids. So let's get to these, and shout out to Marvin for being the first one to submit something. D1 men's AC earning more than 2 bids. All right. Right now you got North Carolina, obviously your number 1 ranked team in the projected rankings. NC State coming off a great weekend. They're at number 9. And then the AC has UNC Wilmington just inside that last spot with the third bid at 18. And South Carolina, UNC Charlotte, Duke, those are teams that are top 40 in the rankings that could potentially rise up to get a bid. What do you think? AC's chance of getting more than 2 bids?
I think I'm buying. I think Wilmington did enough for me at Eastern's qualifier for me to believe that they can get this bid for the AC. I mean, I think NC State and UNC are pretty much a lock. So you're really just talking about Wilmington. And are there other potential teams at the margin? Maybe not anymore. South Carolina had a chance, but I think they're pretty much cooked at this point, down to 27. But, Wilmington lost by 5 to Penn State earlier in the season and then beat them by 1 at Eastern's qualifier. To me, that speaks to a team that is improving, and perhaps significantly. And, there was already kind of some higher expectations for this Wilmington team. So they put themselves in a good position. They get to play at Easterns as long as they don't, completely get crushed. If they win 1 or 2 games, that'll probably be enough.
Yeah, I think that for me, I'm not really sold on Wilmington's ability to maintain the bid, except that there's not necessarily a team below them that I find really compelling as a threat. So like it's kind of a versus the field sort of thing. That you look at the next teams in the rankings, it's BYU, Cal, Ohio State, Washington, Oregon State. So a lot of teams from out west.
And let me point out that some of the teams above them, Keith, are McGill and Northeastern, neither of which I'm convinced by. They could fall below them.
It's true. I mean, I look at a team like Washington. I look at Oregon State. Those are teams that have fewer games and potentially could play well. Ohio State, maybe. So like it's not a lock. So I guess ultimately I'd have to hold on this. I'm a little nervous. UNC Wilmington has been kind of up and down, but when they're up, I mean, they look like a team that go to Eastern to get wins. So they could secure the thing at Easterns. And wow, what a turnaround. Like a second ago, it felt like the AC, we were worried they might not get 2 bids. Now we're over here talking about them getting 3.
You got another
how about we go to how about we go to D1 women's? South Central getting more than 1 bid. Can they get a second bid? Right now, Colorado is at number 9 overall. They're the top South Central team. And beyond that, you got Colorado State with only 8 games. They're at number 22. They've only played 1 tournament. And Texas just played their first tournament. UT Dallas is 7-0 and at number 28. Texas is not anywhere close, I don't think, from what I can tell. They're at 60, but they've only played 12 games. Is there somebody in the South Central who could come in and earn them a second bid? WashU, maybe they're 32.
That's a tough one. I'm going to say hold. I think UT Dallas has a chance. It's hard to assess UT Dallas because, right, so they're sitting at 28, but they haven't really played real teams yet. They played Texas and beat them 9-4. And like pretty much all their wins are by large margins. And they're like sort of being hurt by games like their 12-7 win over Missouri is hurting them. But like 12-7 is basically a blowout. So I don't really want to overread into whether that score is quote unquote too close. Let's see what happens when they play presumably at Centex and play real teams. It's hard for me to say. It's just hard to get a read on them right now. But I think we've seen that teams, that sort of second best team in the South Central is pretty typically right near the bubble. And I think UT Dallas could be that team this year and just get inside. But I'm not willing to buy more.
I'm also going to hold Colorado State at number 22. They only have 8 games in the books. So I think like Dallas, they'll have the chance to move up when they compete again. Some unsightly results, 15-5 loss to UCSB, but 14-5 win over SLO looks better after Stanford invite. They got an 11-9 loss to Oregon. That's probably going to look pretty nice when the math all settles down. A loss to Utah could look better down the road. So I'll hold. They're outside the picture right now. I don't know if we can necessarily count on the Southwest keeping 4 and the West and Northwest keeping 5. So that could mix things up, although UVic is right there. So I think I have to hold. I'm not it's not dire yet, but you got to be a little concerned. There's some red flags right
It's
now.
kind of like you can't say because we haven't seen these teams play real games yet. So until then, not much to say about what that second team could be. Okay, I want to go back over to Smoky Mountain real quick and talk a little bit more about the team that won it all, UMass. We knew they were good. Are you willing to put more chips on the table now that they have the big win here at this tournament? For the second year in a row, I should add.
I mean, I think that they are performing about at the level I had expected coming into this. So I think I'll hold on them. I do love the way that their deep game looked, despite the fact that they're still playing without Luca Harwood and they don't have Jonas Stang Osborne this year. Gavin Abrahamson and Sam Green, like they were very effective in the deep space throughout this game, and they outplayed North Carolina in the semifinals through that lens. But we expect them to be really good. So they had some stumbles at Florida warm up, and this is definitely inspires confidence. But we saw this from them last year, so I do think that it feels like they're on a similar track. They're going to be in contention, but I expect them to be. So I'm going to hold on UMass.
Weren't they missing somebody? I think they were missing a top level starter from them.
Luca Harwood, is that who you're thinking of?
Maybe that's who I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Was he not there?
Yeah, he has not played this season for them.
Are we expecting? Okay, so let me just see what the people are saying. Harwood,
I do think he's expected to return.
No, clear notes on when he will be expected to return, but here's what I'm going to say. He was probably their second best player last year, arguably their top player behind Kelman. With him back in the fold, I'll take some stock. I'll buy here. For them to look this good without one of their most explosive playmakers, to me, is a very good sign. And I think, they do look like a similar team, but what I'm seeing is an offense that is just more clinical. Their offense looks very sharp, and UNC had a hard time taking the disc away from them. Not that there were zero turns, but both that combined with the fact that their defense was getting a lot of reset pressure against UNC and causing them to cough up some very uncharacteristic turnovers. Those combined make me feel like this team has a better chance than a year ago at winning a title. UNC felt overwhelming last year, even when they lost at SMI. It's well, their rotations were whatever. And this year, I don't know. They had kill lines out there on the field during that game. So I don't really want to make excuses for UNC, and I'm happy to buy more stock in UMass, even as I hold my UNC stock.
Well, I want to stay at SMI because one of the teams that we've seen have even more far-ranging results than UMass is Pitt. They had a great run at SMI after disappointing at Florida warm-up. They make it all the way to the semifinals. They lose on Universe to Georgia, so they were just so close to even making the finals. They knock off an injured Brown team. They beat Minnesota. It was a great performance for Pittsburgh. Are you buying Pitt stock? Selling? Where are you at?
To be honest with you, I want to sell. I hate to do that, but I just feel like I haven't seen this team bring it at nationals in a while. These results are pretty good, no doubt. They won a lot of close games. But do I really trust this team when it comes down to it? And I'm able to sell at a high watermark here. I'm feeling like this is a sell high situation on Pitt. And meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and buy low on Brown playing without Leo Gordon. They look, unsurprisingly, they look like a kind of average elite team when you have them without one of their two best players. They're very, very dependent on those top two guys in Nissen and Gordon. And with him out, they looked pedestrian. So no surprise there. I'll buy some of that stock, and meanwhile, I'll sell my Pitt stock to pay for it.
I think I'm going to go the other way here. I'm going to buy on Pitt. I will say, like you, I harbor some of the concerns last year. It's hard to erase those images last year of a team going out there with the best player on the field and good other players. They had a borderline All-American and Tristan Yarder last year. The guys that are back this year and are strong were mostly strong last year. But obviously things flamed out for them in nationals. It's hard to erase that. But they were playing this weekend without Tristan Yarder, and I will say they look a lot less dependent on Henrying. When you can go into a game and have the best player on the field, that's a big trump card, but they look like they don't need him to be the best player on the field to be successful. And that to me is a great sign for them. I still am going to be concerned by the time we get to nationals, should they make it out of that dangerous Ohio Valley. by the time we get there, I'm still going to like have those same hesitations, but I think the signs are pointing in the right way for Insaminur right now. So I'm actually going to buy the Pitt stock, which I didn't expect to say when I started talking about this team.
Well, as Alex Rubin points out in the chat over on YouTube, as we are live on YouTube right now, please join us in the chat. They make semis without Tristan Yarder. And as you point out, maybe less reliance on Henry Ing. Are we seeing a team with enough depth to contend at nationals? Because I think that was clearly the problem for them last year. They kind of ran out of steam as they got into the bracket because they had to rely too much on their top guys. I'm not going to lie, like it was a good weekend for them, but let's not overvalue what were a lot of close wins and losses to the good teams, losses to the best teams. Like Pitt being a quarters team isn't a surprise. Okay. So if I'm going to buy their stock, I got to be thinking semis for them. I'm not sure I'm there for them, even with the caveats. So, what was I going to get to? Utah State. We got to talk about Utah State. Keith, are you ready to load up here? This is the best winless Saturday of all time at a tournament.
I want to, Charlie. I want to believe, but I don't yet. I'm sorry, I don't. I am not ready to erase what we saw at Pres Day from them. I like the talent on paper, but losing a lot is not necessarily the best marker. We've said this many times on the show. Folks who are in the Ulti World offices hear me say this all the time. It's not a good sign when your best results are losses. Like that's always a red flag to me. And let me the case for this stats, I mean, though. I guess maybe you say they beat UBC 11-9. Maybe that's their best win of the season. And I like UBC. We know that too. But yeah, it's concerning for me when a team's best results are red on the scoreboard.
But hang on. For those who are not following this season super close, they lose by 1 to Brown, they lose by 1 to Carleton, they lose by 4 to UNC, lose by 4 to Vermont, 4 to Minnesota, 2 to UCLA, and then they crush Tennessee. Now, here's the thing. If they beat UCLA, who they lost to back at Pres Day, I would feel a lot better about everything from their weekend. But you got to admit, they have been putting up really nice results. And I think I saw Calvin Brown in the Discord say that they just have an awesome O-line that can keep them in games, but maybe just don't have the depth to really like generate the break opportunities and scores that you need to be able to win at this level.
Yeah, I agree with that, but that to me, that's a sell, right? Hey, we've got a good offense, but we can't get any breaks, so we're going to lose a lot of close games is not exactly a recipe for success. Now, there may be enough to get them out of the Northwest, which is a tough bar to clear for any team. I mean, we were arguing about where they should be in the top 25 if they should be in the top 25 with the likes of Utah on the host. So tricky one, but I'm not ready to buy yet. I'm not ready.
Fair enough. Where are we going, Keith?
Well, how about we talk a little bit about a team that I think you could be raising the alarms for right now. Colorado in the women's division. Quandary not covering themselves in glory at Stanford Invite after already a disappointing Pres Day. Are you buying or selling on Colorado after what we saw from them at Stanford Invite?
I think this is a simple value stock play. I'm going to buy. They looked mediocre, but like, why would I sell now? This is a team that didn't necessarily have an amazing regular season last year either. Didn't really look good at all until Northwest Challenge. And then were great. And were probably the second best team last year. So I'm happy to buy here. Admittedly, these Stanford results aren't great. They lose to UBC and Stanford. They have close win over BYU, closer than you would like to see wins against Cal and Santa Cruz. They have not really done anything yet to inspire you. Like, what's their best win right now? Western Washington? That's not good. They have thoroughly lost to all the good teams that they've played. But that to me means it's time to buy.
I'm.
Are you ready
I'm
to
not
cut bait,
sell.
Keith?
I'm not gonna sell. I'm gonna hold because right now, just you can't sell the floor like this. Like I don't think it's gonna get worse than this. But the vibes aren't screaming. This is a team laying in wait to me. Like they're you're not. They're not so good that they can just phone it in during the regular season and just turn it on at nationals. Like I think that's a lot to ask. So I will feel a lot better if we see them look like a contender at Northwest Challenge or at their next event. Like that, I haven't seen that team yet. Like they're not so talented that I can just buy on faith. I need something to grasp onto, and right now we don't got it. So I can hold just because there's no benefit right now. So, I mean, you're pulling the ripcord if you're selling. I won't go out that week, but I'm concerned right now.
How about Stanford? Speaking of teams that maybe you could be concerned about, is it arguable to be concerned about Stanford after this weekend? They lose to Washington and Vermont.
Well, I don't think there's any real shame in losing to Vermont. And I kind of pointed at Washington as being a team that could show some ceiling this weekend. Jury's out on whether they did that after laying an absolute egg to lose to Pitt in the bracket.
6-4.
I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to say this was like a great weekend for Stanford, but just like I've said it before, I'll say it again. Like I just don't really harbor concerns about this team generally on the long term. It always works out for them. Do I think that they're a tier 1 title contender right now? No, but I wouldn't take them off of tier 2. So I'm still comfortably holding Stanford, and they're just like you just never worry about the stock falling off.
Yeah, it's a blue chip. Yeah, you gotta just hold here though. I don't. At some point, I'm gonna run out of excuses for like, well, they were missing this person and they were missing these starters, and okay, like it's 3 tournaments now, and you haven't really like done anything. So I don't know. I need to see more before I'm willing to commit more to Stanford, I think. This was a fun one from the Discord. By the way, Ultiworld Standard and All Access subscribers get access to the Ultiworld Discord. It's a great place to talk Ultimate and connect with many members of the Ultimate community. So check it out, ultiworld.com/subscribe. You also get all of our deep look out the back bonus segments. And this was, you buy, sell, or hold on college stars making the Worlds team. Both the tryouts are now in the books. We had the East Coast tryouts this past weekend and West Coast the weekend before that. So we're just waiting for the teams to get announced. You buying on college stars making the teams?
And not only we're waiting on the teams to get announced, we're gonna have coverage. We have reporters who got to witness it all. If you were in our Discord, we had live threads, so you could get updates on the big plays that players are making. Like this is probably the most access to these tryouts that has ever existed for an average fan. So we get ready for some more content around that. Charlie and I will probably be making picks on the show too. Maybe we'll have some of the reporters come on to help us with that process. But I'm buying. I'm definitely buying. Is of pure volume. They're both because there is a wider band of people who could still be playing College Ultimate than usual, but also just players are in a great place in College Ultimate right now. So I think that there's just a lot of players. I was shocked by the number of names. I'm like, wow, this person's making plays at this tryout, and they're still an active college player. So I am definitely buying. I think you're going to see a considerable number of college age players on these teams by the time they're announced. Full buy.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the 6th year situation going on in college right now, like a number of the top players in college are major contributors to their club teams. Like this is not the yesteryear where, some high school kid makes chain lightning. right? And it's like, oh, like this is like these players are playing year round. They're playing on semi-pro teams. They're playing on elite club teams and often driving the bus for those teams. So I think we're going to see, I don't know, what's the over under on active college players on WUC rosters? I'll give it to you, Keith. We have 72 players going to make the team, right?
Oh
Three
gosh,
rosters of
yeah, yeah.
24. I'll give you over under 11 and a half college
That's
players.
about what I was thinking. I was thinking maybe 9.5 is the line. 11 and a half. Give me the over. If I'm gonna buy so confidently, I guess I got to go over. 11 and a half's a lot, but I think it's definitely possible.
Well, I'm glad I got you to take.
There are people
over.
in college who it's like, how is this person still here? All right, let's hit a lightning round here. Let's knock out a couple of these as quickly as we can. How about let's some more bid talk? The Ohio Valley's gotten a lot of conversation in the men's division. Ohio Valley getting more than 2 bids. You got Pitt, you got Penn State, both looking good. Ohio State potentially in the mix. Could the Ohio Valley get 3 bids or more?
3 bids. Sell. I don't think Ohio State's going to get that.
Also sell. What about in women's as a 2 bid region? You got Ohio State, Pitt, Penn all in the mix. 2 bids.
They're sitting on 2, and you're asking me 3 plus or 2 plus?
Just 2. Can they hold 2?
With Penn and Ohio State. Who was Penn beaten? NC State? Ohio State? I mean, I think I'm selling. I think they're going to end up with 1.
I'll hold on 2. I'll hold on them getting 2. I think Ohio State's going to be really close to the bubble, and I'm a little worried about UVic and Northeastern jumping up, but I'll hold on. I'll hold on 2 there.
UAH stock, Keith, buy or sell?
I'd have to check the market price on it because that's what counts. I mean, I believe in this team, but I think the price is real high right now. I don't know how much room for growth there is. I guess if you think that they are like, I would say if I had to guess the consensus, it would be that they are a quarters team right now. So if you think that they can get past quarters, I would
Nationals
buy,
quarters. Yeah, Nationals quarters.
Yes.
Whew.
And I don't know if I see
gotta
that.
Sell
So
at that valuation.
You think you'd sell on them being a quarters team?
I don't even like. Are they guaranteed to make nationals? Like, let alone be a quarters team?
I feel pretty confident.
I know they're having a good season. I think they should make nationals, but like, I don't know. I'm a hold. I'm a hold. The hype is a little too hype.
Yeah, I'll if the valuation is quarters or like the borderline between pre-quarters and quarters, I think I'd have to hold. I don't think I can buy. Like, there's not that much room, I think, for them to go up from where people see them now. How about let's talk about these women's regions that have just tons of bids. How are you feeling about the Southwest? Right now they have 4 bids. Can they hold 4 bids? Could they get higher? Could they go lower? Like, are you buying or selling that?
Well, I don't see a world where they get more than 4. So it's really a question of whether they can hold on to the 4 that they have. Santa Cruz dropping a little bit this week. UCSD moves up into bid range. There's just not a lot of teams from below them that I'm really scared about. I think they keep the 4. So I buy. Northwest.
Yeah,
I think I'll buy on them too for getting 5 bids. Although BYU kind of let's call it 4. But it could be 5 with Victoria. Sorry. Victoria is currently sitting on the 5th bid. I buy it. These teams are good.
Yeah, I buy the Northwest, and I think I hold with Southwest too. I think one of the things about the Southwest is that they already play a lot of games, and there's no more California tournaments, like big California tournaments together. So their ratings, I think, are going to be a little less flexible going down the line.
All right, Keith, Northeast men's sitting on 5 bids. Do you like them to keep it?
Oh my gosh. I think McGill's a sketchy one, but I think Tufts is okay. I like Northeastern. I feel good about them holding on to a bid, despite the fact they're on the bubble. But McGill is pretty sketchy. So is Tufts really in the mix? They're only like 100 points out right now. It's not crazy. I guess I'll hold if I'm gonna vacillate this much. Lightning round. So I gotta pick. Hold. I'm going to hold.
I'm going to sell. I think one of those lower teams in the rankings, the McGill, the Northeastern, one of them's going to drop out. But I think they get 4. So that is going to do it for our bonus lightning round here, Keith. So Jalal in the chat says McGill may not hit the game minimum. Interesting. I haven't checked their schedule. That would obviously dampen the chances. They got to get to 10
for
if
sure.
they want to earn a bid. We'll see if they go for it. All right, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, question of the week, and we'll let you know what's going on our subs only. We'll be right back, right here on Deep Look. And welcome back to Deep Look. It is time for our question of the week. Keith, take it away.
Well, this comes from Lubes in the Discord. And a reminder, if you want to get in on the question of the week, get into the Discord in the podcast or mailbag channel. Let us know. This question from Lubes. Are there college stars like there used to be? Has the increased availability / oversaturation of Callahan videos and highlights changed this? Has the play style or meta de-emphasized individual players? Charlie, what do you think? Are college stars the same level that we see in past years?
I think so. I think it's different in a way because there's just more Frisbee to watch. There's more live coverage. There's more access to, different types of ultimate. You got the semi-pro, everything else. But I do think that the biggest college stars are household names right now. I think we are right now maybe in a little bit of a changeover in terms of some of the biggest names and faces. Like, think about UNC men's, for instance. Like, who's their biggest star? Is it Ben Dameron? Probably. But like, is he elevated to the level in terms of the public consciousness that like people know that he's that good? I don't know. Maybe UNC is a bad example because of how deep they are, but Henry Ing, right? Stacey Gaskill. These are stars that have been stars for multiple seasons. And when we get to nationals, it's going to be showtime.
Yeah, I also think that in fact, I might even go further and say that I think college stars are even brighter than before. I think that they're more present in more avenues of elite level ultimate. And part of that is just availability. There are more opportunities to play on big stages. I think you're seeing college players play major roles on elite club teams that are playing in the biggest games of the year. I think you're seeing more international competition. There's more focus on this WC, on the U24 World Championships. Then you have the semi-pro leagues where more college stars are getting opportunities to play too. So I think that because I think maybe we've gotten a little spoiled. Like we just see so much coverage that it starts to feel like, oh, I'm so familiar with this player. But like, when you think about your Don Coltons, your Jacques Nissons, your Henry Ings, your Stacey Gaskills, like I think these are some of the biggest names in the game. And so I think the college stars are in a great place. Plus, then you add in that college stars are now college stars for a year longer than they used to be. And that just crosses the line for me. So I think that college stars are in a great place. And the play style, yeah, I do think that there's some elements of the play style that have de-emphasized the individual from the top teams, but because you're seeing that trend continue into those other major avenues, I think that keeps that from being a disqualifier.
You think about like how people were perceived in the past at the big stardom. Like the thing about the past that was interesting is that like there was everything was like apocryphal almost. It was like RSD post about some insane play that was not captured on video, or a player was highlighted in a Ulti Village clip of the day. Like I am aging myself by discussing these things that current players probably don't even know what I'm talking about. But you think back on stars of the past, and it's easy to be like, oh yeah, like Brody Smith, Jack Verzu, these iconic players. But the thing is, some players get famous because they're so awesome for their entire college career, right? They come in as a hyped player and they live up to the expectations, like Verzu. And then you have others who maybe emerge as a college player, like Dina Elimelech. And I think we're seeing those players existing on rosters right now, but we're also in the midst of the changeover of some of the biggest stars of the last 5 years starting to give way to the juniors who are going to be the stars for the next couple of years. So to me, I also think it does have something to do with media coverage. If there was more, so you can watch live streams pretty much every weekend this college season with an Ultiworld subscription. And the problem is they're not all covered with commentary. More on that in a second. Or multiple cameras. And like doing that storytelling in the same way. And the reason for that is simply budgetary. I mean, it's pretty expensive to do multi-camera broadcasts, and we're not really quite there yet. But it would help if there was more of that stuff coming out, and like you could tune in and watch the big tournaments with full camera complements every week and see the stars. But I think if you follow Ultiworld social media, you're getting a lot of exposure to the top college players of now. And for this weekend, for the first time, we experimented with remote commentary on these Smoky Mountain Invite streams. We had in-person commentary at Stanford Invite. And I think commentary obviously adds that next layer. Would love to get your feedback. The SMI commentary was coaching focused, strategy focused, rather than being sort of a traditional broadcast style that, Keith and I do lots of. And so curious for your thoughts on that, because it definitely emphasizes more about gameplay than it does about star players.
Yeah, it also helps to have, I think, a better sense of who stars are going to be. I think we're able to identify, like, there's more youth coverage. Like, so, you're going to hear a lot about not just Tobias Brooks and Rachel Chang for the next few years, but some of the other top rookies. And I think they'll become very familiar over the next few seasons as they rise to being the stars of the division.
Quickly, Keith, let's go through the picks from last week. I continue to fall further behind. And I can't even really be mad at Edward for some reason swapping out my UNC pick for Colorado, because UNC didn't make the final anyway.
Yeah, Edward sniped you there, but it all worked out. I mean, I when neither of us picked UNC to win, it just felt like we were opening the door for the subscribers to come in and clean up some extra points. But it worked out my favor. I had UMass over UNC in the final. I got that in the semis, and UMass fortunately backed me up and finished it off with the win. The subscribers, we went to letting individual subscribers make picks this week. So if you want to get in on that, pay attention to our podcast channel. I'll go in and ask folks who wants to be involved in picks this week. The subscribers had UNC over Brown. So Charlie's original picks before he got swapped, UNC for Colorado. And in the women's division, everybody had the subscribers and I, had the same thing, Vermont and UBC, with UBC taking the win. Charlie also had UBC taking the win, but over Stanford. So the subscribers and I will get the points for Vermont reaching the final, but nobody gets the winner as everybody had UBC.
And we nullified picks at Stanford Invite Men's, right? Because Oregon State had to drop late.
Yes.
Got it. Well, we all picked Oregon, so it's all comes out in the wash in the end. I'm getting my butt kicked. Good one. I'm getting my butt kicked in these picks this year. This is bad, but you know what? It just means I'm going to turn it around at nationals. Nice call on UMass for the dub again, Keith. Going against the grain.
Thank you. I mean, I told you that the reason I didn't buy on them is because I already had high expectations.
You sure did. All right. Sub bonus out the back coming up in just a little bit. We're doing it live in our Discord. We're going to be taking a look at how that is Keith and I, would run a Worlds tryout and decide who to take. How the heck do you pick 72 players out of a pool of 200 when everyone is extremely good? That's a hard job. And you know what? Even the best coaches in the country don't always get it right. They have almost blown it a couple of times. World Games, not this last cycle, but the previous one, they almost blew it. They made some howling mistakes, I thought, in terms of selections and barely got away with it, but they did. So Keith and I are going to talk about how we would manage things. And so we will discuss that in our Out the Back segment that you can get with any Ultiworld subscription at ultiworld.com/subscribe. That is going to do it for this week's Deep Look. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll be back with you next Tuesday, noon Eastern, live on YouTube, and of course, in all the podcast apps that you enjoy. For Keith Rayner, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look. Brunson's going to be okay, Keith.